Pluto is heading into the sign of Aquarius yet again after his short stay last year between March the 23rd and June 11th. And it's a really exciting time for humanity as this great force of titanic transformation and evolutionary impulse is happening for us all collectively and individually. We're going to see today how this works for you based on your sun, moon, or rising sign. I suggest you listen to your rising sign. And today I have a very special guest, Adam Elenbaas of Nightlight Astrology. Adam was my teacher in 2018 when I discovered the amazing tools of ancient and traditional Hellenistic astrology. And I'm so delighted to bring him into our session today to also complement this with his wisdom, his insights, and also maybe draw a tarot card for each sign as well. So stay tuned for that. We're going to get started. I'm just about to let Adam into our Zoom room. Welcome, Adam. So glad to have you today. I already told people that you were my teacher in 2018 when I discovered the incredible tools of traditional astrology for the first time. And let us know a little bit more about what you're up to right now at this time of year as we deadhead towards 24. I understand you're doing your annual Kickstarter program. Tell us more.
Oh, thanks, Lori. Well, first of all, I'm just so happy to be hanging out with you, and my memories of you in our classroom space are, you were one of the students who always had the most poignant questions, and yeah, I'm just so happy to see your work just exploding and doing so well, and yeah, it's just really fun to collaborate with you and be here today. Yeah, so at the end of every year for about 10 years right now, I fundraise to support the content that I create year round. And the fundraiser serves as a sort of flash sale for all of our certification programs. So we have 4 years worth of professional astrology curriculum in ancient Hellenistic astrology. And one of those years is also a horary astrology course. All of the courses that we provide, about 60% of the students who come through our programs are on a form of need-based tuition, which means that they're paying what they can within their budget. And part of the vision of the school since its inception in 2010 has been to make sure that astrological education and content is accessible or even free. And so in the last 40 days of the year, we do this fundraiser where all of our programs go on sale. And when people support the program and pick up a class pass, they get a huge discount on the different courses we offer. And that in turn ends up allowing us to have basically no bottom line so that a huge amount of students can come in. And if someone needs to pay $10 a month because they're living near the poverty line, they can do that, right? And so that it's been something that's worked really nicely for like 10 years. And yeah, we're in the midst of another campaign right now. One of our stretch goals this year is if we reach our backer total, which our goal is to reach 1,777 backers by New Year's Eve. If we meet that goal, then we're going to be launching an affordable reading service in addition to having all of our training programs in an affordable range. So people could come and get an affordable price point on a reading. And also, like many astrologers like myself and you're going to have long wait lists or, a kind of a backup. And also, not everyone can afford the price point of someone who's like an experienced professional in the field. So what we're doing is we're allowing our graduates of the program to come through this affordable reading service and get experience, getting paid to be a reader and getting those first couple hundred readings or whatever under their belt, which is so helpful for them. But then it also affords it provides an affordable price point for people out there who may not be able to, afford a reading otherwise. So if we meet our stretch goal this year, then that service will be in place in 2024. So the Kickstarter does a lot of cool things in addition to supporting my staff and the channel, my YouTube channel and everything we produce. It also acts as this kind of flash sale for our programs, which then in turn supports this whole affordable model that we use.
Yeah, and I'm so excited by this idea of a readings clinic. Like when young massage therapists graduate and they have to learn their art and they end up having a chance to do these very discounted massage therapies. And I thought, what a brilliant idea. And I'm sure it's going to take a while to get the website structures and all the back end created and the intense energy to restructure that stuff. So that's wonderful. I love that idea. And I want everyone to know that the reason I even ended up in Adam's world was because number one, Nadia Shah had a talk with him on her channel in 2018, which totally captivated me when I heard how the sky really works. And then the second thing about it was that that's how I got into astrology, was because it was Adam's Kickstarter, and I signed up for some of that, really discounted content for the courses he taught. So I'm encouraging everyone listening, if you really are curious about astrology, it doesn't mean you have to do this to be a professional astrologer. My partner's listening to me every day, and he's becoming an astrologer just by, tuning into everything, and now
By
sees
proxy.
by proxy, but he sees his life through, the astrological wisdom of what he now knows. And you can navigate your life. I always say to people, time your best life, but you can really help, move in more flow with the currents of the sky rather than pushing against them. So you can learn astrology with Adam just for your own usage, which is how I thought I was going to use it. That's what I thought. I thought this will just be a little personal education. Now look at me. Oh my God. So anyway, thanks, Adam, for, sharing your Kickstarter program. We'll have the link to the Kickstarter, or the access to it, underneath the description box. And there's a lot of things you can get from Adam, including horary readings and stuff. So you're not just giving money away, you're getting something back.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we really appreciate it. People can also, if it's easier, they can find the link by going to nightlightastrology.com. The 2024 Kickstarter link is at the top of the page there too.
Okay, so everyone, nightlightastrology.com. Plus, I'll have the link below in my description box as well. Okay, we're going to talk Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, as an Aquarius rising, it's my favorite topic. So I mentioned earlier we had a little testing 1-2 last year in the month of March through to mid-June, when Pluto did his 0-degree ingress and really just basically gave us a flavor of what is to come. What I noticed, and a lot of us did in astrology land, is how much the AI thing just bounced into the collective sphere with all that information, news, excitement, chat GPT, trepidation, concern. Screenwriters and filmmakers are creatives being worried they're going to be replaced. That was the main thing I was noticing last year. And now we're going to have him back on the 21st of January, where he'll be, or 20th, depends on where you live, I guess, and where he'll be there all the way through to September 2nd. And then he slides back into Capricorn. And around the 19th, he comes back into Aquarius. But we only see a 2-degree movement this year as well, to keep people abreast of that idea. It's still really an early stage of a major energy. Yeah. So some of your thoughts about some of the broader themes for the collective before we give everybody's all sign delineation.
Well, I just did a series on my YouTube channel, and like you've been doing, kind of previewing, priming the pump, getting us ready for this archetypal experience, which we had just such a brief preview of last year. But it was a powerful one, obviously. One of the things that I said in this recent series that we did was that it helps to understand the ancient significations of Saturn. And most of the time when people are studying, first studying, say, modern astrology, you'll hear something like Saturn is structure, or, sort of like you get these very narrow, unfortunately narrow understandings of Saturn. And once we really broaden and understand the mystical depth of Saturn that ancient astrologers had, then I think we start moving into some interesting spaces with the meaning of Pluto entering Saturn's fixed air sign. So the first thing that comes to my mind would be that Saturn, in ancient astrology, Saturn is the dimmest and most distant planet. That's like a starting point. And that as such, it sat on the threshold and was thought of as a kind of gatekeeper between the limited and the limitless, the known and the unknown, the visible and the invisible. Saturn also, as a boundary straddler, was the planet associated with the aspect of the opposition, not because Saturn is oppositional per se, but because Saturn is a planet that always demarcates the boundary between two things that sit on opposite sides of a third thing. So you have like a wall, what's inside the wall versus what's outside the wall. Saturn will therefore represent, for example, people that will fight at all costs to keep everything normal as it always has been inside the wall. Whereas Saturn will also be the planet that represents people who have been cast out on the other side of the wall by society. For example, Saturn's ancient significations included heretics, as well as inventors and innovators, contemplatives, mystics, but also authoritarians who would do anything and would go to all lengths to make sure that new ideas were called heretical. And so, for example, you have someone like Galileo, who would be considered in ancient astrological terms Saturnian. He's a Saturnian figure because he introduces an idea that gets him labeled as a heretic. And
Mhm.
yet, it's that same idea that ushers us from one paradigm to another. And so Aquarius is really, when you think about Aquarius, what you're really thinking about is the threshold between old ideas and new ideas, or between one paradigm and another. And it kind of, Saturn in Aquarius is sort of like, as the ruler, is sort of demarcating the boundary between thought structures that guide or shape our experience of reality, and which ones we're open to versus which ones we try to keep out, and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So once you think about it that way, when Pluto goes into Aquarius, of course, the most exciting thing to think about is how are our thought structures and paradigms about to change, which of course can come through technology, it can come through political change and ideological change and all these different kinds of things. But I think what's also really exciting to think about is not just um, it's about our relationship with ideas themselves. And like one of the things that I think, for example, if we haven't taken the time to really contemplate and let an idea work through us and digest it, one of the things that can happen is that anything that's labeled new in contrast to old can be embraced, but too quickly. And then we have to deal with um, the shadows of our kind of like ideological impulsiveness. Like, ooh,
Mm.
this new, and that's why I think you have people sort of scared of AI, right? It's like, ooh, there's this new idea, and I think there's a hesitance and a wise sense of like, let's be careful, let's not go too quickly, let's absorb and think about this before we just, run off. That's already the tension of Pluto and Aquarius. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's good, but also just because it's new doesn't mean it's bad. So
Yeah.
there's this space of like, how do we digest and work with like paradigm altering ideas, and how quickly do we allow them to be used or experimented with? And that's all the space of
Yeah.
that threshold space that Saturn in the fixed air sign represents.
Yeah, it reminds me, I was just having the same kind of conversation with Dan Waits of World Astrology Report because of the Pluto ingress into Aquarius and history coinciding with the discovery of new peoples. Marco Polo and his trips to China, that was one of those eras, the conquistadors and the Incan Empire, and the sort of coming into the place of discovering a consciousness or an sentient intelligent being. These cases are humans, and the water bearer is a symbol of a humanoid body pouring water on humanity. And we're looking at AI, and it is a new form of intelligence. We're all thinking the aliens are going to be here. This is going to be about finding the dead bodies for sure, and locked up in the
Right.
wherever they are. It could literally be, hey, here comes some alien intelligences
Mm.
that have bodies that are, extraterrestrial. But AI will be an alien intelligence that we are encountering, just like that we didn't know that was really going to be there or could be there. And it could be scary and it could be exciting. It could be revolutionary in a positive way. I mean, the Protestant Reformation, like talk about a
Mm.
major vibe that happened in Pluto and Aquarius. There's a standard set way that things are done. It's a Catholic tradition. It's the Roman Empire version of Christianity, and then boom, along comes a Reformation, and it's not just a new religion; it's a new concept, right? About
Mhm.
what is happening with the bread and the wine,
Yeah.
and it's not like magically transforming. And I kind of find that this whole idea of the intelligence of AI may also allow us to communicate with other terrestrial intelligences, like the whales, like to be decoding languages of other species. So
Mm.
I actually feel excited about it. But before we
Yeah.
started today, I brought in a quote from Renn Butler's Archetypal Universe. Everyone knows me on my channel. This book is every time popped out. And I thought that it was interesting that Einstein was born with a Pluto square Jupiter. And when Pluto enters into Aquarius at 0 degrees, he'll square Jupiter in, I think, 5 or 6 degrees up there in Taurus at the time. And that energy is going to be kind of baked into this year, while Pluto's moving through the early degrees of Aquarius. And so here's a really interesting dark side of a Jupiter energetic connected to a Plutonian energetic. and this quote made me really smile because that's the fear of the AI, amongst other things. Technological process is like an axe in the hands of a pathological criminal.
Yeah, that's a
And
good quote.
we talk about, the technology advancements that may happen this time around because we're also in an elemental air cycle that began on near the solstice of 2020 when the Jupiter conjunction with Saturn happened, making this officially an era of air. Air ideas, technology advancements, things that inform the collective, especially society at large. I kind of feel like this whole energy of the technology is also maybe about the DNA, right? Because we have all this new gene editing technology. And did you hear, Adam, the FDA approved the CRISPR technology to do gene therapy on people, snipping their DNA and permanently changing their DNA to heal illnesses?
I did hear about that. Yeah, that's just so fascinating.
It is hopefully good, but it's also daunting
Yeah,
to
exactly.
actually snip the genome, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's one of those things where exactly what I was talking about on my channel recently, where I was like, some of the ideas that come through will be so big that you don't know, should I be excited, should I be afraid? And I think one of our allies during this period is like, even if it's just a little bit of space within which to digest, reflect, let ideas work through, because not only is there a question of whether the idea is good or bad, which is like this, of course, there's this moral level to things, but beyond the moral level of whether something is good or bad is to allow something to be like ideas as living beings, which is a very Aquarian notion, right? That ideas themselves have a kind of ontology, and that if we allow an idea to speak, and we start thinking about and relating to an idea rather than thinking of it as an abstract object that we can use like a tool, which is very like empirical, that if we think of ideas like beings or people, which would, by the way, fall in line with the idea that something like AI or technology could start to be seen as sentient. Because ideas are in a way sentient. And so if there's any space within which to allow an idea to be sentient and to relate with it, then the idea can reveal more of itself and it can change or evolve or morph a little bit. And I think relational space with ideas is really important because one of the big shadows of Aquarius, of course, would be that ideas are the means by which we further alienate and objectify ourselves from material, sensual, like embodied life. And we don't want that. I think that's the kind of big shadow of Pluto and Aquarius. So it's like if we can have an experience of ideas coming through, not just as good or bad, and should we or shouldn't we use them in this or that way as tools, but thinking of ideas as things that we can relate to and letting ideas have life.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I always jokingly call the Aquarius energy Spock in Star Trek, where we put Captain Kirk and Leo, and so, and I don't know where we're going to put McCoy, but, you can get this disembodied kind of, robotic quality of human consciousness, forget about the robots we're creating, in
Mhm.
which we can really become quite emotionally distant, like, from the heart of things, the sun, which is our soul, right?
Mhm.
So the Saturnian overlay in Aquarius does bring us in touch with the idea that this is the place that is connected to a planet that is in opposition energetically to Leo, where it is the place of the sun. So to find ourselves losing touch with the soul of something could be a shadow of Aquarius. And you said something on your channel I really liked about, your channel being like a cosmic church. I wrote it down because I was listening to it this morning thinking, yeah, what are you up to, And I know you don't mean like a religious church, but is people singing a song that of something you all are in tune with? But yeah, if you want to talk about church, not in an institution, you want to talk about Aquarius. It's like, what is the common thing that threads us together that it still has some soul left? Because if there's going to be a soulless nest, it's definitely going to be a Pluto transit through Aquarius. Like, even though the conquistadors discovered the other, they decimated the other,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So there's a very dark side to that energy.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that can happen, I mean, there's this funny saying that probably everyone on your channel has heard before. I know you have, which is like Aquarians love humanity but hate people.
That's
And
so
like,
true.
it's like, And that I think that if there's anything, I'm the only reason I'm kind of going maybe a little toward the shadows is because one of the things Pluto does is it brings out the shadow of the sign so powerfully and over time, while also excavating and bringing out the sort of subterranean kind of like richness of the sign. But one of the, I think, shadows of Aquarius would be that we spend so much time thinking about how to advance ourselves. I mean, if you think about the myth of Ganymede, the water pourer, he's he's sort of beloved by Zeus and thought of as this shining example of humanity, and so he's brought up to serve the gods, which alienates him from humanity. But then also he can't quite be a god. He's in this funny in between space, and it's a sort of it's a sort of gifted space, but it's a little dissociated, and that's so Saturnian. So
Hmm.
anyway, the point being that the shadow is sort of like the very means by which we think we are elevating ourselves is also the very means by which we are condemning exactly who we are and exactly where we're at. And there's just a subtle tension there that we have to work with or learn how to hold. Like we can actually do two things at once. We can improve ourselves and advance by means of new ideas into something closer to the gods, which is sort of the water pourer myth. But we do so while also completely sort of honoring that this all of these activities don't make us better than nature. They simply are a feature of our nature.
Mm. Yeah. Well, there's that Jupiter in, earthy Taurus, squaring the ingress. So,
Mm.
reminding us that the earth, the Taurus, the reality of being embodied basically will matter. Also, there is the moon is sitting in Gemini and kind of like in a whole sign, it depends on what time you're looking at it, but pretty well trine as well, Pluto. And Gemini being very much about usually scientific discoveries historically, especially Jupiter, especially the conjunction of Jupiter and Mars in Gemini has coincided historically with big turning points in our collective
We've got that in
technological world.
we've got that in August. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So a big boost there of some kind of new massive advance in technology. If I had any feelings about this whole thing, I think a lot of it's going to be medical as well as AI, just because Mercury is the night triplicity lord for Aquarius, and he's all about, remember in the ancient tradition of Vettius Valens, he's about physicians,
Mm-hmm.
So there's this kind of like overlay of the medical stuff moving way into some kind of frontier or some kind of,
Yeah.
almost what's I like it's like a sci-fi version of our
Mm.
medical world, which I
Yeah.
would love. And there's this old, that Baba Vanga, the Bulgarian psychic, she predicts in 2024 they're going to have a massive medical breakthrough that cures, if she didn't say cancer, she might have, but cures some major illness. So that's one of her 2024 better predictions. Everything else
Mm.
looks pretty bad. And I thought, well, maybe she's right because she made that prediction without astrology. She's
Mm.
tuning into like Baba Vanga says major change. I think she said cure for cancer for 24, but some kind of medical breakthrough. So yeah, gene editing, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I think about what's really interesting to me is I think there's a moon cycle, and I want to say it's in February. There's a February new moon in Aquarius that's exactly square to Uranus and Taurus.
Mm.
And that when I think about like I jokingly use the image of like you're going to see all sorts of interesting advancements in the med spa industry, right? Like here's an anti-aging technology or whatever, that kind of, but really like the pairing of Uranus, who is very Promethean, right? Stealing fire from the gods, and then you pair that with Pluto in Aquarius and this new they have just entered Aquarius, and then the new moon squaring Uranus. And I just thought like that cycle should be really interesting in February because that's a moon cycle that's the first one to really emphasize and launch the Pluto and Aquarius qualities forward in
Mm.
terms of the lunar cycles this year. But then the other one that's really interesting is I want to say it's around June 6th. There's a new moon in Gemini. And of course, Jupiter will have just entered Gemini, and Venus will be at the heart of the sun.
Oh
It'll be
yes.
it'll be Cazimi at the new moon, and then you've got Jupiter having just entered Gemini, trining Pluto in Aquarius. And I was like, gosh, that's like I think of Jupiter in Gemini in 2024 as kind of like this, like chaos magic. like
Mm.
just an explosion of hermetic magical ideas. And then when you think about that trining Pluto and Aquarius, that's where I agree with you and think that, okay, some kind of advancement in technology, medicine, maybe science, et cetera, um, could really explode onto the scene. But also one of the features of Jupiter and Gemini that's I think is really interesting is the signs of Jupiter and Mercury are oppositional to one another, as you know, but
Yeah.
they put together this notion of like the principles by means of which we order or organize our lives. I think of as very Jupiterian. But in those signs, we have light cohering and moving upward, right? So Sagittarius, we're moving in that double-bodied sign, we're moving toward the light half of the year, or the light rising again. And in Pisces, as the sign, double-bodied sign culminates, the light takes over. So you always have Jupiter moving toward like this kind of coherence and clarity. With Mercury, the signs are happening as the darkness is returning or the darkness is taking over. And there's something very deconstructive about those periods. And so
Mm.
I also think about, that Jupiter in Gemini is in a sense where our ideas about something go through a process of deconstruction. And part of how deconstruction happens is not just saying that's wrong, but about introducing all sorts of new ideas, which then the old ideas have to grapple with and be in conversation or dialogue with. And then what may emerge is, should a new idea replace an old one, or should an old idea be slightly changed, modified, or improved? But that can be, for some people, that may feel very chaotic, that process, especially if you're uncomfortable with, I don't know, like intellectual or spiritual liminal spaces where you have to reconsider your principles or your ideas. But I
Mhm.
think, like, to me, that's really exciting, especially since it starts in a trine to Pluto and Aquarius. It's like it's such a huge year for a transformation of our thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, Gemini, the twins are mortal and immortal, right? And there's something about when you tinker with the DNA, I just want to go back to that, where we're tinkering with playing God on, the human genome. So that whole time, I think, is going to be positive, but scary. And I
Mm.
was just talking with Gary Caton for a video that's coming out in January about the elemental fire year. Or in other words, Mercury's doing cazimi and retrogrades and all the fire signs in 2024. And it's an interesting placement because, with this movement of Jupiter into Mercury's Gemini kingdom, Mercury's busy doing a lot of Leo, a lot of Sag, and a lot of Aries. And the Leo Aries corridor, and the Sag corridor are very active and very intense. But, Leo and Aries are in a flow, a sextile to this Plutonian movement through Gemini. So there's something also maybe positive about that. It's just an energy stamp on the year, where it could actually look like Mercury's busy doing good things, looking over at Jupiter in his house and going, "Be good over there. You better
Right.
behave."
That's funny. I love that.
You never know. The position of Mercury predominantly in fire is probably going to be about innovation, daring, maybe hopefully not recklessness in ideas and invention.
One of the things that ancient astrologers said about the element of fire that is also sometimes lost on us in modern astrology when we don't study the entire philosophical paradigm of ancient astrology was that fire was the element that sat closest to the realm of the gods. So if you think about there being like a fire, right, and then air, and then water, and then earth, that was how they organized the elemental spheres. And so fire was thought of as this. I mean, we think of it as like, a bonfire or something, but elementally in an earthy sense, that's how we often visualize fire. But for them, fire was also this, like Prometheus stealing the fire from the gods. Fire
Mhm.
was also associated with anything that was of a higher intelligence that was closer to godlike nature, like the Ade or the Archai in the allegory of the cave, the archetypal ideas in the mind of the universe or God or whatever that are coming from a fire that's projecting the images on the wall of the cave that the prisoner is seeing. So they get free and they realize, oh, they're coming from the fire. And then, of course, eventually the prisoner goes out of the cave and goes out into the light of the real world. And that's maybe the journey of like enlightenment. But in this world, when we get in touch with fire, it means we're getting in touch with ideas that are of a higher order or that are being downloaded from some higher sphere. So I think that that little piece of ancient philosophy is like really supports what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That is the wands and the tarot as well. So the idea, if I know you do the tarot as well, and we move through the layers of reality up to that fiery wands element, and that same idea that it is closer to the God, eternal, divine aspect of reality or being. That's really, yeah. And of course, that makes sense to me. Like it really does. It just all of that makes total sense. So what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead and do all signs. I think we kind of covered, everyone don't be too afraid about the CRISPR cutting up your genes and the robots taking over the world. Not next year. That might be a little later. We can worry about that.
Sure. Sure. Whatever you
Okay.
want to do, I'm game.
Yeah, I want to talk to whales myself. That was an idea. That was an idea that Dan Weiss and I chatted about, and it was like, what if our AI sophistication allows us to translate languages of animals so that we can actually communicate with them? And what if the whales are really smarter than we thought, or the porpoises, and any of those smart mammals in the water, and they could tell us like the history of the Earth? Wouldn't that be cool? Like the whale says, "We've been here as a." There's a kind of spiritual thing about whales being like memory keepers for the earth. So, in the new age community, but would be kind of
Mm-hmm.
cool if like talking to whales led to like a deconstruction of human history and how we all got here.
I would love if they had I would love if they were like I could also like imagine myself being really pleased if they ended up being pretty superficial, like they had lots of opinions about the Kardashians or
My God, oh my God, oh my God.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, seriously, yeah, because they've been getting their own like sonar version of the Kardashians, and they're like, Jesus, Kim, what's with her face? Okay, well, that would be kind of fun too. So let's, where's your Mercury again?
Cancer.
Okay, just wondering the jester in you. One
Oh,
thing I
I've got Mars and Gemini though. That's probably bad.
Okay. One of the things I love about watching your channel a lot, like when I watch your stuff, is you always break yourself up, crack yourself up laughing about something that
I
you're
know.
talking about, which leads me to start laughing. So I'm like, it's like really fun. Okay, so we're going to go through the all signs. We're going to talk about some conversations about what this 24 ingress might look like, knowing that it's not done yet, right? We got a little Capricorn turning point in the fall, but it's still the beginning of a sense of what is in play for the next 2 decades for each of the sun, moon, and rising. I always tell people, listen for your rising. It's all about you. And then, your sun can be your body in Vedic astrology, your home, your mother stuff, your safety needs, your emotions. And then, the sun can be father figures, can be your purpose, career, your eternal nature, your deeper self. So, but I do encourage people always to start with your rising sign, because it will be kind of delineating. I always say the rising sign is you sitting at the vantage point in which you can peruse the entire 360 degrees of reality. Your others, your career, your home, your children. So best to listen for rising.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me get us over. I'm going to pull up the sky, unless you want to use your software. I thought I'd just flip us into
No,
a.
you go for it. I don't have mine
Okay.
prepared.
Okay, wonderful. And are you going to pull a card for people?
Oh, sure, if you want me to.
And, yeah, wouldn't it be kind of fun? How did you get into the tarot again?
Oh gosh, I mean, I just started getting into I get I Ching, tarot, astrology, all just came into my life while I was in the midst of so many years of working with ayahuasca and psychedelic like entheogens, and I just started naturally taking an interest in divination. And the one that caught me the most was, of course, astrology, but these were other things that I developed on the side, I guess you could say.
Oh, what is the name of your book that you're writing? The Oracle Speaks?
Yeah, that's right. That's my new book. My first book was a book about ayahuasca that was published through Penguin in 2010, and I hadn't written a book since then. And Uranus squared my natal Venus, which is my ascendant ruler, and I suddenly got caught in a creative whirlwind and started writing a new book, which I just didn't know if I was ever going to write one again, to be honest. So it's been really exciting to be. The new book is basically it's everything that I have learned about divination, 14 years of doing this professionally, but it's all deliberately encrypted in story form.
Ah, wonderful. So this is a done book, or it's an on the way book?
It, I'm, it's on the way. And what I've done is I'm pre-releasing it. You can pick it up through the Kickstarter, and I'm releasing one chapter at a time in text and audio form before I put it into like a physical book.
Oh, I can't wait. That sounds amazing. I'll definitely be snapping that book up. Yeah, writing a book, sometimes you have no choice. It's like Elizabeth Gilbert says, when the muse speaks to you, if you don't say yes, the muse will go somewhere else.
That's right. That's exactly right. I was like, oh, okay, I've got to make room for this because it's coming. And that's how it was with my first book too. It was just like, this is something, and I imagine it's probably the same for all kinds of creatives, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I have been struck by the muse multiple times and forced to write.
Right.
So, that's what I love about YouTube. It's like I don't have to write. I'm like, as a writer, I hate writing. So,
Right.
okay. It's true. All writers hate writing. All right. So let's roll with Aries and start with that. And, I am an Aries sun and moon, so I kind of relate to all of you Aries sun, moon, and rising folk. And for me, like looking at that Pluto ingress into the 11th house of good spirit, it can definitely look like a time of really transforming and revolutionizing and shifting some of your larger groups of belonging. That the clubs you wish to connect with, your chosen tribe, maybe some of your friends as well, literally may be gone. You may no longer wish to. Literally, the death of those friendships doesn't mean they have to die. But anyway, there's an energy up there, really wanting over the next couple of decades to transform that part of reality. But it also kind of is a part of the sky that I've seen really work in people's charts as where they come into a contact with the authentic movement maker in them, like how they wish to do something better for the influence of the group or the others, the big others in their lives. So some of you may really power up and you kind of desire to join in with or become a part of or start even your own transformational deeper, movement of something that you care about, especially because Pluto is definitely that revolutionary impulse as well. And we'll just mention that you may have to square off with Jupiter in your earnings house, something more deeply aligned with your future vision of your life, squaring off with your desire to just prosper financially. Jupiter may be at odds, and you may be dealing with that question and answer, maybe a little bit more than you thought you would. Money doesn't make you happy. Earnings aren't everything. Those could be question marks and answers forthcoming in 2024. That's kind of my vibe. Any thoughts on any oracle speaking here?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love the way you put all of that, and I would just say that as ideas are ready to change, guiding ideals or even ideologies, thought structures, as there is a transformation on the level of what ideas you're interested in or which ideas you want to guide your life, it will probably change the people that you surround yourself with. That new ideas mean new people, or a transformation of ideas means a transformation of the kind of allies or networks of people that you associate with. The card I pulled is the Eight of Cups. I can kind of see it holding it up to the camera there. And
Yeah.
the Eight of Cups is interesting because it shows someone walking away under a moonlit sky from, eight cups. And it's like, well, you're walking away from a lot.
Mhm.
And I just wonder if that doesn't tap in a little bit to the Jupiter Uranus conjunction that will also be happening in the second house for Aries, where it's like there may be new ideas, new people, new groups, and it may cause you to have to walk away from some things that have really worked in the past. And there's a risk in that. And the Eight of Cups always suggests that if we want to go toward the completion of the Ten of Cups, we at some certain times you're going to have to leave some things behind. And it may feel like there's a risk in doing that, or there's it's a little bittersweet or something like that. But forging ahead and leaving some things behind as a way of opening up room for more. That's
Mhm.
one of the meanings I would take from that card coming up.
Yeah. Oh, I love that angle on it too. And yeah, absolutely. You can't. There's an old Zen parable. How do you carve the perfect elephant every time from the block of jade? Jade. That's the student says it to the master, and the master says, "I carve away all that is not elephant." Oh, that's funny. That's my dream about elephants last night. But anyway, and the gist of that is sometimes it's what we remove that defines where we are really meant to be, not what we
Mm,
add.
nice.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you go first on the next one. We'll just kind of tag team. Does that sound like fun?
Oh, perfect.
Yay, me too. Okay, so let's move it to I'm on days. I forgot. I had to move it forward to get Pluto in there. Let's go back to the hours. All right, moving it in. And you're on Taurus, which makes sense because you're Taurus rising, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so it's interesting because obviously Pluto entering Aquarius in the 10th house, again, I would say when major thought structures are ready to change for Tauruses, they may be ready to change as your career or your life work is ready to change. So, thought structures changing, guiding ideas changing, paradigms changing in relation to work or career changing or public facing identity changing. And this would be coinciding, of course, with Jupiter Uranus in the first, which is suggesting that there's ways in which you're also fundamentally trying to open up new possibilities for yourself. How am I changing as a person? How is my identity, my body, my the way I present myself to my world? How is my psychology changing? And then there's this close relationship with thought structures changing in the career arena. The card I drew is the Hanged Man.
Oh,
And
lucky you.
right. So one of the things that comes to my mind with the Hanged Man is that there may be a period of time in which you have to wait. You have to be very patient in allowing for I mean, and the Hanged Man makes sense on a certain level because Jupiter Uranus wants to go forward and, open up and transform very rapidly. Pluto in Aquarius is slower moving, really slow transformation of bigger structures that have to do with your work in the world. And so, when you see like the foot on the gas pedal with Jupiter Uranus, but then the slow weightiness of Pluto in the 10th, there may be some divine waiting that you have to do this year as a way of holding the tension between those two areas of transformation.
Mm. Yeah, I'm really liking that idea of also how the idea transformation within this Aquarian realm for each of the signs we're going through is really, the key piece, right? With the energy here too, I forgot to mention her, but she's situated Minerva, the goddess of wisdom knowledge from the ancient traditions of wisdom and knowledge, like the counterpart to Athena, is wedged in there, and just for the ingress. And I'm like, well, if you are somebody who is a Taurus sun, moon, and rising, and you've got this electric shock of Uranus, like lightning bolts of change, but also kind of like more like the third eye can like wide open up with Uranus energy. So the aha, the light bulb, the moment of some kind of clarity, and Jupiter, wisdom, truth, and knowledge, and Minerva there as well, like really diving into this knowledge, truth, and wisdom archetype. Then it looks to me like a lot of Tauruses are going to have a revolutionary enlightenment, but not necessarily spiritual. It could be because Hangman has that halo, right? He's
Yeah.
suspended, but he's got that like Odin on the world tree moment of illumination, which Odin got the runes. So it looks to me like some changes in the career are pending, and some of the early feeling of what's shifting is coming through this maybe insight or dramatic a lightning bolt of self-identity, the first house really coming into a transformation. And it's going to take time to align that up with the changes that Pluto's putting in motion in your reputation, your career, your visible actions in the world. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think the seeds of that are very evident here in 24.
Nice.
Yeah. So Adam, are you quitting astrology?
I know, right?
No kidding.
No, not
Okay,
anytime
good.
soon. As long
All
as I
right.
have anything to do with it.
Oh my goodness. Alrighty. So I'll start with Gemini. Gemini, sun, moon, and rising sign, especially rising. So the Pluto ingress into your ninth house is very metacosmos, between the worlds house, called the house of God traditionally. I find it's like if you go on the surface, it could be a lot of things. It could be, foreign shores and book publishing and court and legal matters. But if you go a little bit deeper underneath, it's kind of very much about what that dharmic call is. Like, where are you here to align into a meaningful life? Where you feel like that your reason for being has purpose, that it's somehow you're being used by a greater calling, or even just flowing with the Tao. It could be any of those kinds of vibes. So it's a very spiritual home in which Pluto's entering, and he flows to you, Gemini, sun, moon, and rising. So he's not like really shaking at you over the next 2 decades. And so maybe in 2024, in this trine, this flow, trines are positive, they're Jupiterian by nature, you might find yourself being kind of more wide open to the kinds of spiritual philosophy, ideology, and meaning of life question marks being discovered and answered for you. At the same time, with that square at the ingress to the Jupiter part of your sky, I don't know, Jupiter here, he might have you, you overthrow your guru. Get rid of your spiritual teacher. Go deep into your psyche, into the sort of collective unconscious, your own unconscious, your past lives, your own self-sabotaging ways. And there may be some tension for a lot of Gemini, and I have a progressed Gemini sun, so I'm talking to myself about really having to break free a little bit, Uranus, Jupiter, of the shackles that you put on yourself so that you can be more in alignment with this calling of the ninth house to be, in a purposeful and meaningful life. And some of those self-sabotaging 12th house things are often very subtle. So hopefully Jupiter Uranus is illuminating in 24.
Yeah,
That's what I've got. Yeah.
yeah, the card that I drew, Lori, is the Two of Wands. And it's an interesting card. It shows an individual standing on like a precipice of like maybe like a castle wall or something. He's got two wands. He's holding a globe in his hand. He's looking out over the horizon. And to me, if you think about Pluto entering the ninth house, one thing that we could mention is that the ninth house was also associated with um, pilgrimage, travel abroad, places that are, expanding your horizons somehow. And sometimes that's education or spirituality or mystical experience. Sometimes it's literally travel to a different part of the world.
Mhm.
Um, but one thing for sure is that, again, as Lori was saying, Pluto in the ninth is trying to create a kind of, if you think of the ninth house as a place of our understanding, then Pluto is going to transform your way of understanding the world, yourself, so many different things. And it suggests a broadening of perspective in the air sign. When you consider Jupiter and Uranus in the 12th at the same time, one of the implications is that there is a world out there that is bigger than us. Like the 12th house, one of the meanings of the 12th house was where we lose control. Like if the first house was considered the helm or like the steering wheel of the boat of life. The 12th was about experiences that take us away from having our hands on the steering wheel. Sometimes that's incredibly positive. Like a Jupiter Uranus conjunction in the 12th, most positively spun, might be that world that's bigger than us that has something it promises us. And this
Mm.
guy's this person's looking out over the horizon, like the world is my oyster. Like, what is out there for me? And where can I go? And what bigger adventures are there? What resources do I have available? But I see this as like almost like an indication of a philosophical broadening and an opening of possibilities, but also questions as to what I'm going to give myself over to that might be bigger and in some ways scarier.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Yes, of course. And the 12th house has that moksha liberation quality as, because you are sometimes falling away from the steering wheel is exactly what you need. It's that old country song, Jesus Take the Wheel by Carrie
Yeah,
Underwood.
yeah, totally.
Jesus. Well, I love that. With my progressed son, I might have an opportunity to live in China for a couple of years. If that comes to pass, I'll be living into this
Oh, wow.
realist, literal, like it's a whole new world, it's something big, a new horizon opens up.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. I love that Carrie Underwood song. Makes me laugh. Okay,
Yeah.
moving into Cancer. That's your turn now. Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising, folk. Here we go.
Yeah, interesting. So Pluto entering the eighth house. There's a lot of people get really scared about the eighth house, death. And one of the things that we have to remember is that the eighth house is like the waiting room for the seventh, insofar as planets in that place are being brought down in time to the setting point where they disappear in the west. So for that reason, the anticipation of setting is associated with the anxiety associated, the anxiety of death.
Mhm.
What sets is also what reaches a place of resolution. So those karmic bills that come due eventually, but also the things that come to us from other people that are due or owed somehow karmically. So it has this very like you kind of you get what's coming to you in the eighth, and so there's this very punitive, fearful, anxious connotation, but it's also all those things that are coming to you from other people and places in life that may admire you. For example, the eighth house is called the esteem of other people, which means that the way that people really value you and really appreciate you will be a part of the gifts that Pluto has to bring. It'll change your life by virtue of the people that take interest in you, or the people that want to support you in some ways, or the people that you're bonded to, and the kinds of changes coming in their lives that may bring in new resources. So there's a lot more than just death and fear and anxiety, although there is a kind of like yeah, this is where karmic bills do come due. But on that note, I would say that, life is going to start changing pretty dramatically according to the give and take and the value exchanges of your most intimate relationships. It's like soul contracts with other people are about to change your life.
Mm.
And that coincides with Jupiter and Uranus in the 11th, trying to perhaps open up or bring exciting new possibilities with groups of people or, collaborations with other people. The card that I drew is the Justice card. Now, the
Oh, it's
Justice card,
perfect.
again, it's like sometimes people get freaked out by the Justice card, but it's really just about, you know, uh, old stuff that is coming to be resolved karmically. It's also about the gifts that are given and the debts that are paid off and the debts that come due as well as the blessings that come due. And justice is really, you have to remember, when we look at justice, it's really a neutral card. It's not a card that says bad things are coming, like, because we tend to think like justice means punishment, but it doesn't. It means justice. And that can be a very good thing. In it'll probably be mixed over the course of, almost 2 decades with Pluto in the eighth house. But we're also going to learn very carefully about, how to keep a careful watch on the relationships we're in and the give and take of those relationships. If you're a Cancer rising, you'll become more attentive to if you're giving too much, or if you're not giving enough in return. Those kinds of balancing acts you'll get a lot better at. And you may also find that new people need to come into your life so that the give and take is more appropriate.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with all of that. I didn't know about the esteem of other people. That's a new learning for me. Thank you for that. I sometimes go very Vedic astrology on myself, with the moksha houses, and I always find that the eighth house perfection ages, when people go through them, are like they're going into a cocoon, really, or chrysalis state, and they come out the other end, deeply transformed at a level of their identity. Because in the moksha of that house, the spiritual liberation of that house, it has to do with a divestment of ego. And I find that when Pluto's there, if anyone's going to like really take you into a journey of letting go of a sense of self in order to find a larger, truer self, that's going to do it. Because of that square to Jupiter, I wonder, Jupiter being guru, teacher, other meanings too, there could be some kind of need to dissociate from some kind of group that you have always connected to, like you've always just belonged somehow, even if you don't officially belong, like you identified with. And you're going to have to, I think, radical changes here in those definitions. When you talked about like who I belong to as a group, as you change yourself, like inside yourself, and you're no longer like I am, whatever you think you are, identity, ego, consciousness, and you're going to change who you associate with. And I think there's going to be some feelings of friction in 2024 as a beginning, a nascent transformation of identity through the eighth house. So we're moving into like not just, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher, but what am I really? Who am I?
Mm.
What is this consciousness? Anyway, so it's very spiritual to me. I mean, on a practical level, of course, it does have to do sometimes with shared monies with partners and resources with other people. And those can be transforming dramatically as well. And when you talked about justice and people being afraid of that card, I don't know. To me, it's always about the divine balancing act. I mean, that justice card brings things back into a divine
Right.
balance, so
Yep.
I'm never afraid of the archetype of justice in that way. Yeah, I think that's about it. I don't want to say that, because don't you have a Cancer placement too?
My Sun and Mercury are in Cancer.
I thought so, your son. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a lot of cancers in my life too, but I kind of feel that this is a year ahead in which there will be some significant internal work that leads to a very significant outer picture of how we associate, affiliate, and connect to those larger groups of connections in our lives.
Hmm.
All righty. I love the cards you're drawing. They're just seemingly very on, aren't they?
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it feels like there's a good flow.
Yeah, they are. Leo's sun, moon, and rising sign. It is a really intense energy you're going to have in the house of any others in your life that are important to you. And it is usually considered to be about marriage partner, but it can also be just a very significant relationship in your life, people that matter a lot and factor in a longevity way, like a committed connection to them. But also I find that, one of the things I've learned about the seventh, 10th from the 10th and derived houses, it looks a lot like your clients, your marketplace, your audience, the people you reach from your career activities, and those are transforming as well. So those significant love and long-term partnerships, maybe some of your way you reach out to your people that you need to be in contact with through your 10th house activities, your career, is going to be transforming and changing over the next few years, but you'll start to get some taste of it in 2024. When Jupiter in the career space up there with Uranus, reputation, career, uh, you're very much looking at some tension between maybe like literally someone important to you and things that you're doing to succeed, because you're very lucky up there right now and very successful until the end of May, and or just some real tension between your successful objectives that are really looking good on you here with Jupiter up in your 10th house and dramatically exciting after the April conjunction of Uranus and Jupiter, and some thing going on in that 7th house. And because it's not you, it can be a Plutonian character, right? Somebody who acts a little bit dominating or controlling, maybe in your face in the next year ahead, and maybe at odds with what you're trying to do in your expansion in your 10th house. That's one thought. It could be very literal. Like, is that a tyrannical friend, a tyrannical client, a dictatorial wife or husband? So at a very practical level, I get some of those gnarly attentions. But what do you think, Adam?
Yeah, the card that I drew is the Fool. And
Oh,
such a strong archetype. I think that if we I will think about this, I'll say more about the Fool in a second, but first of all, let's just say if Pluto enters the seventh in Aquarius, for Leos, one of the things it does is it holds up to you a kind of mirror, right? In and through relationships, relationships start acting as this mirror upon which, you can reflect and contemplate who you are and the ideas by means of which you think about who you are. And people can enter your life, not just now, but in the course of the next years, that start saying, "Hey, have you considered that this is the idea that you're identified with?" And you go, "Wait, I didn't think that was me, but well, maybe I am. Maybe that is part of how I've identified." Or they could say, "Hey, have you considered this other idea about who you might be?" Oh, wow, that's really different. So I think that if you think about it as a kind of revolution of thought and ideas about who you are that are being introduced through powerful, meaningful, deep relationships with other human beings, that's one of the things that comes to my mind for Pluto and Aquarius. Um, Also, there's something you may want to be pressing reset or completely transforming your relationships, which takes you into Fool territory, right? Many outer planets I've seen enter the seventh house, and people go, "Oh, maybe there's something better out there," and in a love affair or so something comes up, and you don't know if you're the fool about to walk off the cliff, or if you're following an impulse to go in a new direction that will ultimately be really positively transforming your life. Sometimes it's both. Um,
mm,
and then I think, Jupiter Uranus in the 10th has a similar kind of Fool energy insofar as there's like, "Hey, let's do brand new things around career." Okay, well, some of the way in which Jupiter Uranus comes through can be a little bit like the Fool insofar as it's like there's so much excitement, there's so much enthusiasm, and in a sense, you cannot know where it's going. You just, like the Fool, you have to just take to the highway and let it play out. On the other hand, using the Fool almost always speaks to the need for some discernment. Like, just be just a little bit cautious. You don't want to be so cautious that you kill the spirit of the Fool going on a mission with a kind of youthful naivete that is part of the journey. But you don't want to be so naive and ignorant that you throw yourself off the cliff. So that's a kind of a balance here in introducing powerful new things in relationships and career and embracing the newness while also, just being a little cautious and careful not to go too far too quickly.
absolutely. And I love that you brought the shadow part up. The kind of like, this is classic Jungian shadow work to have Pluto going through the house of the other, because they'll display all of your disowned self for you right up in your,
Right.
excavate the parts of yourself you disowned by mistake, and you'll see it in your face. And born with a Pluto in my seventh, I can attest to that. All right. Well, it depends on Placidus is my seventh, which I used to think it was true, but whole sign it's in my eighth. All right, we're moving in to the next sign. And I love the Fool card. The best I think about the Fool is you kind of operate from more of an innocence as well. Like this is a game of life. I'm going to play it. Like it can be risky because you might not be, as you said, you might act foolishly, but also it kind of embeds a willingness to uh, find the goodness in all of life, kind of playfully investigate what life is about. You said something in your channel that was very much about the Fool in one of your readings from your journal. It was that long one I really enjoyed and really reminded me of the Fool archetype. It's the one where you're dialoguing with the sky. This is a recent one on one of your Pluto
Oh, yeah.
videos. It's like you're gonna, this is a game. You can't argue with the rules, and you didn't actually build the game board.
Right.
Somebody else did it already. I think it was called God. All right. All right. You got the Virgos.
Yeah. So the card that I drew is really fascinating. It's the Six of Cups. And the Six of Cups shows like almost like two kids sort of like exchanging gifts or yeah, like giving a gift or something like this. And it has this kind of youthful, nostalgic, whimsical quality to it. And to me, it's one of the more enigmatic cards. And it's interesting because I've actually pulled this card a few times this autumn, like since about the fall equinox in relation to some personal questions. And so I've gotten to know the card, and you know how it always hits different when it's like, oh, wait, I have no idea how this card pertains to my situation. Then you live it out for a couple of months and you go like, oh, wow. So, at any rate, uh, I'll tie this in a second, but Pluto entering the sixth is a fascinating place because the sixth house was traditionally called the joy of Mars. It was called the house of misfortune. But we have to understand what that meant for ancient astrologers and why Mars was associated with it. For the ancients, misfortune was not like misfortune was a normal part of life. You're on a walk to the market, you stub your toe and you break your big toe or something. Like that's life. It happens. How do you meet that? Mars was the planet of courage and conviction. It was the planet that was associated with perseverance and the quality you had to draw upon to overcome things and to draw from, like drawing water from a stone is very sixth house. Like
Mm.
how do I get the most out of something even when I'm feeling stifled, blocked, prohibited, frustrated, aggravated? I'm in the middle of this or that, and it's really important. Then I get a cold. How do I, the sixth house and the quality of perseverance, courage, determination, hard work, sacrifice that build up within us, the success in really any area of life, relationships. You're going to have a quality relationship. You have to know how to fight well and persevere and get through the hard stuff of the shadows of the relationship. Your work, same thing. Your health, same thing. Your family. There's no area in life that doesn't require us to display a kind of existential grit. And if we do, we find that we are rewarded. We're rewarded mostly because we feel stronger, more capable, and confident within us. And the reward is that difficult experiences are no longer doubly difficult because we fear or judge them. They become just part of the tapestry of life. And suddenly we find that we are resilient people, and that draws and attracts things to us in life that are very positive and powerful. So when Pluto is entering this house, it suggests that you're going to have new problems and new thoughts and means by which to handle them and work through them. And this also can mean that there are new things that you're going to feel very deeply compelled to suffer and sacrifice on behalf of. Mars was the god of passion. Passion means what you love, but that you carry as it kind of burns your hands while you carry it. So when Pluto enters the sixth house for Virgos, I think of new things that you're going to love, but you're going to, like, for example, as this is entering the sixth house in my 8-year-old daughter's chart last year, she got interested in gymnastics. It's coming back around. I'll find her in the basement, literally sweat pouring down as she's practicing her gymnastics. This is
Wow.
something she's passionate about, right? So that Pluto entering the sixth will give new passions, new things we're willing to sweat on behalf of, right? And then it gradually offers us gifts, because we've put in a certain amount of sacrifice, which is also why the sixth house is associated with service, right? Because there's a sacrificial attitude with service that is its own gift and reward. the Jupiter-Uranus connection in the ninth to me suggests that there could be some really big breakthroughs around spirituality, religion, philosophy that are going along with it, the things that we're newly passionate about, or the places that we're having to persevere and develop strength through. Now, so when I see this card, this is interesting because I see a juxtaposition that says, look, wherever you're heading, there's going to be the need for sweetness, tenderness, gentleness, a childlike kind of innocent quality, because you don't want Pluto in the sixth or Jupiter Uranus's accompanying movement in the ninth to create an intensity that makes you so white knuckled that you can't enjoy the things that you're working on or the things that you're sacrificing for. Like, I asked my daughter, she's sweating in the basement doing, I said, are you happy? Are you enjoying what you're doing? She goes, I love it. So I see the Six of Cups and I say, for Virgos, like, you're gonna love, you got to make sure to love what you're doing and stay sweet and gentle and tender in what you're doing. So you don't want it to get so serious that you lose that quality.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, it's a great card for that placement as well. I mean, it brings a nice softness to it all. Yeah. So my feeling too is like I just talked to the Leo risings, and any Leo risings can tell you how that already went. But I know a few Leo people who definitely also not only did they like Pluto, like in really literal like death, and sixth house, the job or the work, and they retired during that transit
Mm.
since 2008. And some of them at ages where retirement wasn't even needed. You know what I mean? They like that. I'm done with that service, that job, that path of work, because it is a house that's often associated with the work you do in the world. And it's an interesting placement too, because yeah, you said like misfortune, and the ancient world looked at a lot of things as misfortune. One of them was slavery, being, abducted into slavery by conquering,
Mhm.
peoples, or having to be a tenant serf and not having ownership of your property. In other words, being in service to the lord of the land. And there's a sense there that, with Pluto, I think Pluto's power. Like I
Mm.
think that, if you were slaving away in a job that you didn't like over the next 20 years, you're going to leave it.
Right.
You're going to transform it because you're going to be empowered, and you're going to find, yeah, like that perseverance and resilience of the Mars factor, but Mars cuts too. So, where can you end some, travail of work that may be very challenging and no longer needed? And or no longer true. I mean, because at the end of the day, Jupiter says what's true up here, what's dharmic, what's in your path of, as if you had a spiritual pastor talking to the whole ordeal this year and going, Jupiter up there, well, you really don't look like you're in alignment with your work. What do you think?
Yeah.
And
Right.
there's this kind of push-pull to find the truer place for the work you're here to do in the world, and maybe even more so to find a deeper meaning, a service in that place. And I listened to an Indian astrologer one time who talked about the sixth house being the place of our karmic debts being paid, like we pay the dues there, so we are of service or seva, and we pay the dues, and saying that because we can pay the dues, we get the rewards of the 11th. And so I guess, Pluto would say, well, pay your dues with power, with intensity, and in the short term, 2024, Jupiter says, let's align with, like, I think he's like bumper bowling. You can't gutter ball it here. Jupiter is pushing against Pluto, saying, and wherever you're going in your work, we're going to try to keep it true.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. I wish the very best for all of my Virgos, because I'm surrounded by them. Okay. Like in my real life, they're all over me, my friends and my kids and everything.
Hmm.
Alrighty. Whose turn is it? Is that
Yours.
one? Yeah, thank you. Libra, Sun, Moon, and Rising sign. What we've got going on is your fifth house Pluto ingress, and don't be afraid. I know I have a lot of people tell me they're terrified that their kids are going to die and all of that. No, no, just this is a transformation of what I always think of as a kind of like the incubator of your creativity, your muse, your inspiration. You birth babies, you birth books, you birth, projects, you birth businesses here. So Pluto is going to help you kind of be very fertile, but fertile in a way of what is truly empowering your inspiration, enthusiasm, and joy in life, and what isn't really, because it is a Saturn mark sign, as you said, demarcating the boundaries between things. I kind of like it here if you are somebody who wants to really move into an authentic level of expression in any creative or artistic or or even entrepreneurial energy, that you have something you want to just full on go with. And in 24, some of those impulses may become more evident. But I do know that the square to Jupiter and Minerva and Uranus in the eighth house can be maybe feeling challenged a little bit in 2024 around resources, maybe finances that you have share with another, a marriage partner or business partner, maybe longer range monies, investments, 401ks, things that you put in your treasure chest. For the most part, when I see Jupiter here, and he'll be here to the end of May, I actually observe people having financial bounty coming from unexpected and unearned income, usually, chunks of money, I call it. And so there is that promise here, but I wonder if, you're still going to be in a push-pull between things going on with, it could be your children, they need money from you and you don't necessarily want to give it all up from your savings and your 401k, or push-pull between your, as I said, creative and artistic endeavors and something to do with the financial resources. I'm being very practical right now and not esoteric with the eighth house, because I find 5 and 8 are both often associated with money issues, as are 11 and 2. So bringing in the monetary side of this, no matter what, you're going to be more bounteous by the end of May with Jupiter moving direct here. And yet you've got some kind of intensity in your fifth house. And that can also involve some intensity around romantic love relationships too. I loved a card for this one because I did not and really wasn't sure where to go on this one.
No, you're fine. So I pulled the Chariot. So you were talking about push and pull, and I think that is one of the great traditional significations of the Chariot. Is you have the two different like sort of like the horses that pull the chariot. They're like Sphinx, and one is black and one is white. So you have the idea of the yin and yang, or the opposites. And the charioteer, sits on the chariot, which is obviously a metaphor. The chariot, in, for example, throughout Hinduism, you have the Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita sitting on the chariot in the middle of the battlefield, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and Krishna is the charioteer. He's the one driving. Well, there's an interesting way in which, the whole point of the Bhagavad Gita is about teaching him how to drive the chariot himself. It's like, here's this guru that's sitting there being like, I'm your charioteer. I'm here to help you drive, but I'm also, we're going to sit and have a long conversation, all of which is metaphorically about how to work with opposing forces in our lives. For example, the initial opposing force that directs Arjuna is the desire to flee the battlefield. Like, screw this, let's just go to a cave to meditate, and which is a understandable impulse. And then, there's the opposite tension or impulse to engage in action in battlefield. And so whether it's that, any kind of tension between the opposites is usually depicted by the chariot, and the need to learn how to drive the chariot of life by being holding the reins and being masterful with the tension of opposites, which is how we navigate through life. Well, if we apply that to Libras, you think about the fifth house impulse, which the fifth house, one time heard it described by an Indian astrologer as the joy derived from one's dharma, because it's a trine to the first house, which was called dharma. And there's some sense of the fifth house being associated with the joy or pleasure that should come from inhabiting your true self and your true gifts and so forth. Pluto might be starting to say, hey, you know what? Are you really joyful? Are you really happy? Are you really inhabiting yourself and your gifts? Is there a way that more happiness could come through being and doing yourself? So if that's a very personal emphasis, the eighth house, on the other hand, is creating all these tremendous breakthroughs. But that is that eighth house by nature entangles us in reciprocal relationships with other people, soul contracts with other people. So where there's tremendous openings, but those openings come through dependency. They come through relationship, whereas there's also some shift that has to do with the need for my own personal creative joy and autonomy. Well, those are maybe those are the opposites that we're trying to work with, and the push and pull, which I would see reflected in all that Lori was saying about the different ways in which the eighth and the fifth could pull: children versus money, shared finances versus personal creative endeavors. And so maybe that's a way of pulling it or creating like a broader archetypal base for it, Lori.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. I do have some Libras in my head too, and what you just said really fits as well about the Dharma element and the joy of one's path. Are you there in the joy? Yeah, that really works for some of the Libra dilemmas I know out there.
Right.
Alrighty. Yeah, I think this is you. No, me. Oh, who's first?
This is me this time, I think.
Good. Don't ask me about menopause brain, okay? Like I wish I never wish it on a man in my life.
That's funny. Okay. Well, a really interesting that we've had a bunch of twos come up so far, or a couple twos. So the card I drew for Scorpio ascendant, or whatever you're listening to, for Scorpio is Two of Cups. And you see this kind of alchemical marriage depicted here. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Jupiter, Uranus conjoining in your seventh house, Pluto doing its transformative work around home, family, roots. To me, this means that Scorpios are going to be looking, for example, at the way in which your relationships have been shaped or transformed over time by the relationship dynamics that were a part of your home or family. On the other hand, it could mean that you're ready to start your own home or family, or it could be that key relationships are coming into your life that have the power to almost like create a new foundation from which to work from. Pluto in the fourth to me suggests like an rebuilding or reconfiguring the base of your life psychically, emotionally. And then Jupiter Uranus suggests that maybe that's happening as there are new exciting openings in relationships taking place. So I love this pairing as, again, home, family, and relationships, big work and change in those areas, pretty straightforward. But then the Two of Cups suggesting the possibility for new, like alchemical relationships or bonds being created, which could have a very powerful effect this year.
Yeah, I love that card for this as well. It really does have a nice spin too. It's very positive in general, those Two of Cups energies. With Pluto down the bottom of the sky too, and it is literally, your family of origin, maybe your mom and dad, maybe the kind of the ancestral or familial stories that you grew up with. And Pluto will pretty well have you dig under the surface over the next 20 years, you guys, you Scorpios, to look at more squarely at what's underneath, or to look more deeply, into it, because I find Pluto here can often reveal to people what is really going on. Like, I mean, talk about things under the surface, right? We're in the midnight of the sky, in the darkest part of the sky, and now we've got the god of things that are hidden maybe being revealed through excavation. So I think a lot of you will go through a period, not only over the next 2 decades, but this year ahead, of kind of like maybe discovering things to do with hidden and unseen elements of your family of origin, your tales of your family, your ancestral stories as well, that can really maybe sometimes hit you in a tension aspect with a significant seventh house connections, relationships, maybe your marketplace, your audience. But the other thing about it to me is that, you're being deeply terraformed. Like there's something going on here. And I think at this point, it will really feel like you have to really root yourself in what is maybe uncomfortable, but really necessary in order for you to really thrive in that Jupiter seventh house storyline, because that is classic level up a relationship, really, whatever ones that matter to you. And you have to do it from a really deeply, authentically true, rooted power. Not because, your partner wants you to marry them tomorrow, or your client needs you yesterday and you're on call, or, or you lose yourself to the service of others or to the expansion into others that Jupiter here could bring on for you. So there's kind of like, to me, it's very soul worky to have Pluto on the bottom of the sky here in a moksha house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's see what's next. My son's a Scorpio rising, FYI. He's always getting called out on my channel. So with Pluto in the first house, right? And that old Pluto in the first house or Scorpio risings might feel really comfy, but boy, has he lived a life full of confronting his mortality at a very young age on a few reckless episodes of death-defying experiences. So here we have Sagittarius. It is me, right? Yeah. You guys are like looking at Sun, Moon, and Rising Sagittarius, an entry point of Pluto into your third house. I always call it the kitchen sink, junk drawer, whatever. There's a lot of things we say about that cadent house, but it can be very practically about your writing or your communications projects. It can be siblings, especially younger. It can be things to do with your neighbors and neighborhood. And often people from your childhood are here, like your friends that you grew up with in school, at elementary or even high school. So this is a really powerful transformation energy that's starting up for you this year and over the next 20 years. You're feeling it, and how you want to deal with all of those elements of your reality. But because ideas can be generated here as well, I think you may be really ruminating over some powerful thoughts that are going to be appearing to you over the next few years. And it sextiles you, so you're not in a disagreement with it necessarily. You're rather chill with the whole thing of Pluto in your third house. And you could transform those relationships with those siblings, for example, if needed, like redefine them, kill them off and restart them. But I think the square to Jupiter in the sixth house kind of makes me feel like you may have very practical tensions in 2024 about what you're trying to do to provide, to expand, to grow, to be prosperous, to be abundant in your work and the work you do in the world. One of the easy means of that sixth house, and to even be healthy, to prevail against illness or sickness, and things that are pulling you to transform third house matters. And, it's kind of like third house matters may not even be about you. It could be a powerful story going on with someone else, like a sibling, like a childhood friend, that is giving you some kind of tension with the work story in 2024. Because I definitely, with that Jupiter Uranus pending, there's going to be some major, exciting, transformation and shifts coming through in the work you do in the world, Sagittarius. But there's this intensity in the third. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, the card I drew initially, I was like, what? And then I thought about it and I was like, oh, okay. So I drew the Hierophant,
Mm.
and the Hierophant was, one of the names that was given to it at different points in time. One of the names that it had was the Pope, but it also called the Hierophant. One of the things that you have to pay attention to with this card is the fact that people are going to the Pope and receiving a benediction. So they're receiving a blessing. They're seeking a blessing, and I think to get this card, you have to set aside resistance to wounds with judgments of institutional religion, because it's really not about, it doesn't have to be. I mean, sometimes it'll show up and it'll actually have a connection in context to those things. But archetypally speaking, whenever we sit down and well, let's just say you say a prayer to the universe or your higher self or whatever word you use, and you say, please help me with this, or I need some help with that, or whatever, and you ask and then you receive. That process of like putting a prayer or an intention or something out there, and then something being granted or denied through the medium of asking,
Mm-hmm.
that's the Hierophant. I just read this beautiful essay on the Hierophant in a book on the Tarot that I'm reading with a friend, and it was talking about how the Hierophant serves as the process of appealing to cosmic authority, the gods, whatever you want to call it, and that there is some belief that in acting ritually, whether you have an altar and you pray to Ganesh or anything, that host of the statue of Ganesh is like the Hierophant insofar as you pray to it and it has some way of interacting with you to help or teach or guide or give or whatever. So when I see this, I go, this is really interesting, because you could read it in two ways. Pluto entering Aquarius could very well be, I mean, remember that the third house is like the ninth house. It is about um, philosophy and learning and mind, and the way in which we interface through thought with the world. And so I wonder if the things and people and places we look to, that whether we look to them for approval or we look to them for resources or support, and that who and what do you approach for help or resources or benefits, or blessings. And there could be a really significant change in terms of saying, like, for example, if I tend to look at all of my superiors at work and I say I really need their approval, and if I have their approval, then I ascend on the hierarchy of the company. The Hierophant comes up with Pluto in the third, and it says to me like you may find that you're appealing to the wrong authorities. You know that
Mm,
there's almost like remember the third one of the third house significations that Stephen Forrest used all the time is the heretic. But that there's something because it's oppositional to the ninth house, right? So
yeah.
there's some like be a free thinker. So I wonder if there even isn't some revolution where what you consider to be a higher authority that you tend to petition is not going through a radical shift, whether that's philosophical or religious or at the workplace or something like that.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, the heretic. I didn't even think about that angle. It is also the house of the goddess, and Demetra George likes to point out that she thinks that that's where the diviners are, the oracles. She thinks it's like
Mhm.
you go to the marketplace, or there's a gypsy with a fortune telling spot,
Yeah.
and you get your fortunes told. So it's more of an energy of moving away from that structure, like of the ninth house of God, which involves religion. And yeah, where is the highest authority? Where do you lean into? Who are you listening to in life as your authority?
Right. And I mean, like, I could see, for example, if you tend to be the person who tends, like, you externalize authority into like the workplace or a religion or a dogma or a doctrine, this might be where, working with an oracle and drawing cards for yourself would be very third house compared to receiving all of your teachings from, I don't know, like you take literally everything A Course in Miracles has to say, which is
Mm,
fine. Like, I love that or whatever. But this could be like, instead of relying on Course in Miracles for the truth about everything philosophically, I'm going to pull a card every morning. Like
mm.
that could be a change in terms of like who and what you're approaching as a guiding authority in your life.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense to me. Oh, that was a good one. Yay, I'm thinking of all my Sagis that I know. All right. Yeah,
This one's me,
Lori,
I think.
this is you. This is you because I was thinking, oh, I get Aquarius. That's me.
Interesting. I like this one a lot. Okay, so um Pluto enters the second, Jupiter and Uranus in the fifth. First of all, I love Pluto entering the second as su suggesting that there's a change in income and expenditures. Like very basically, whether it's your philosophy or it's how you handle money, not just money though, time, energy, money, resources. Resources could be emotional, they could be financial. Second house is about what we have or are in possession of, as well as what we want to develop that may help like prop up our existence. So people develop skills in the second. People make money in the second. People spend money in the second. It's really about like it's like your personal little marketplace, all of your own goods, services, ideas, resources, what you take in, what you want, what you're developing, what you're growing in your garden, as well as the energy that kind of goes out. So when Pluto enters, it's like, okay, there's a paradigm change around your resources and how you use them or what they are or what they look like or the guiding thoughts or philosophies around business or money. So that's a really positive change. Well, Jupiter Uranus to me is suggesting that creative renaissance, rebirth and awakening in a house that really has to do with creative fulfillment. Am I feeling happy and creatively fulfilled in life? Now you could see mundane things like money and kids coming up, kind of like we were talking about earlier. The card that I drew is the Four of Swords, which is a really interesting card because here it suggests almost like there's a couple different ways of reading this card. It's a very meditative card that suggests like, almost like you're visiting someone's grave and you're quietly reflecting and remembering them or something. It's like this peaceful card of like death and rest and reflection and stuff like that. But another way of looking at this is as kind of like an appreciation for what's come before. I sometimes see this card come up when there's something like ancestral legacy, like something that has provided for you in the past that you are feeling deeply appreciative of.
Mm,
So one of the things that I could see coming up here would be like a creative legacy, like some kind of emotional or creative inheritance that you're coming to really appreciate and reflect and embody something that you've learned or that came before you somehow. I could also see this card as just a moment of reflection. Okay, Pluto's entering the second in an air sign. There's a death, there's a releasing of an old way of doing things around money, resources, and maybe some new creative energy coming in this year. But there's also an invitation to like really reflect and be sort of slow and deliberate in the new things that you're creating, like a reflective, contemplative energy that's being encouraged.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And it's interesting too, if you get all on the literal stuff, things that they're connected to our mouth and our jaw or throat, the things we ingest are also in the second house,
Mm.
So it's very possible then that there's also going to be some deeper transformation of your things that bring you great pleasure, not necessarily joy, right? Because Jupiter's expanding your joy house, but can involve like just pleasures of life as well. Your fifth house may go the way of the dinosaur. You may realize that a quart of Haagen-Dazs a day isn't really good for you. So
Right.
some of you caps are going to clean up your dietary style. We're going to say beginning in 2024. And also I kind of like this placement here for like a deeper, like if you kind of layer down that second house, right? And you go like, well, if you're going to have earnings in our day and age, we make it from our vocation. We used to, and we grow the crops or, tend the herds, but those were our vocation to grow the to grow things and tend the herds for our wealth and our prosperity that applies to our basic Maslow's needs on the bottom line of the pyramid to be surviving. And so to me, it's also like, can you power into a truer calling? Voice, vocation, calling are all connected to the same Latin word. And I don't think there's any Capricorn here in the next 20 years who's going to end up 20 years from now in a meaningless way of making work.
Mhm.
It's going to take you much deeper under the surface of what you value, what your values are, where your energy and time is best spent to be powerful in your resource management, making money, creating what you need to thrive and survive. First house matters. And yeah, you may find this year is a little challenging because there's a square to Jupiter in the fifth house. If it's a practical nature, it could be fifth house people, like your kids again, or something like that, like kind of crunching against this transformation of how you wish to move under the surface in terms of your power to be aligned with your purpose, vocation and earning stories. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't some kind of fifth house person, like a kid or a romantic lover, squaring against what you're up to. And but I love what you said. Yes, inspiration and enjoyment of creativity, the creative impulse to birth stuff into reality. Jupiter's very fertile here. So it could be a great time to birth a new project, a new art form, a new book, a new business idea, as many other things can be birthed in the fifth house besides children.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. And if you're a Capricorn sun, moon, and rising, especially rising, that's a fertility transit. Don't get pregnant unless you're ready for a baby.
Right.
All right. So moving into the Aquariuses of the world, that's me. I'm one of you, and I'm actually excited by Pluto in the first house. I talked to a lot of my Capricorn friends to get the lay of the land who've gone through this since 2008 to see some of the tips and tricks they have for me. But bottom line is we're all going to experience a transformation of our very fundamental sense of identity in the next couple of decades. And yet at the same time, we're going under the surface of ourself, like literally we may change traumatically and dramatically, hopefully not too traumatically, the vantage point from which we view all reality. So, if you've been sitting, like, say, at the wheel of a Jeep, now you're going to maybe move to the wheel of a Lexus. More archetypal, you want to transform and shift, your steering wheel itself. And
Think we lost you there, Lori. We'll wait, and I'm sure Lori will be back in just a second. see if I can, let's see if I can't bring my chart on the screen, and I'll just continue where Lori left off until she logs back in. Let me put Aquarius on the ascendant really quick here. Okie dokie. Let's see here. We were looking, I'm going to move this forward so we get the appropriate date on the screen. All righty. I think I've got it. Now, let me just remove, we'll get the same point of view that we had. Bear with me just a second, guys. Here we go. So this was the basic view that we had before Lori dropped off the call. So I'll just continue this in the hopes that she can use it for the recording. So we've got Pluto for Aquarians, Pluto in the first, squaring Jupiter and Uranus in the fourth. And what I would say here is, first of all, when Pluto enters the first house, you have this tremendous emphasis on personal transformation. And for Aquarians, that means the ideas by means of which you understand yourself are going to change. The ideas are so important for Aquarius. The ideas that shape or guide reality or society or individual life or relationships or the workplace. But these are the ideas that are most fundamental to your very being. And so when Pluto enters the first, it is truly a period of tremendous existential reflection and change. It doesn't happen all at once. Of course, it happens gradually. But as it occurs this year, we're also looking at this tremendous power of Jupiter Uranus in the fourth house to induce awakening and revolution at the roots. So that power to change around home, family, the stories or ancestral baggage of the past, to create renaissance and freedom and awakening and new possibilities, again, in home, family, the roots and the living environment, is a very powerful promise that Jupiter Uranus has, as Pluto is also inviting you to reconsider who you are. So, identity and home and family, broadly speaking, those are the big ones. Now, the card that I drew for you guys is the Lovers. So you will see that in the Lovers card, the two are it's like Adam and Eve. But this card often points, for one thing, it could be that, like, sometimes this card comes up when literally there's a relationship that's going to come into your life that's going to be significant. And Pluto in the first house, don't underestimate the power for that placement to bring new relationships in, because as there is a new self, there are often reflected in others new relationships, right? New identity means new relationships. They're first and seventh, always together in that way. So could there be new relationships as you are transforming your identity? Yeah, certainly. But also the Lovers really points to a kind of choice, a choice that has to be made between worlds. The Edenic choice to eat the fruit. I don't like to think of that as a choice morally between good and bad. I like to think of that as a choice of going into life and saying yes to it, even though you know that you're going to be hamstrung by the opposites, by the play of light and dark. You say, well, I understand that I can't really fathom what that means, but I'm going to go into it because I'm curious, and I have a kind of trust that this process is part of the promise of life itself, to go in and sort of taste the fruit and learn from it, right? And grow from it, rather than being perfect and damned or perfect and fallen or something like that. I really think of the Lovers as a choice before us. What will we do? What will we say yes to? What will we open ourselves to? Um, Pluto in the first house might be asking that question as you are considering who you want to be right now. And that may have a crossover with the roots and the questions about, your base of operations, your home, your family, and so forth. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead for Lori since she's not back on, and I'm going to just take us into the last house, which is Pisces. Pisces on the ascendant, so Pisces sun, rising, Pisces moon, whatever you're listening for. And by the way, I just want to say that I'm so honored to be here and to be on Lori's channel, and it's been really fun to watch Lori just explode. She's just so awesome. So It's really been cool to watch her YouTube channel just like totally go bananas. So anyway, I'll try to finish this one out for all of us. I'm going to draw one last card here. Ah, interesting. So, for Pisceans, Pluto's entering the 12th. Now, that 12th house is a kind of existential blind spot. It is the house that speaks to that which is unconscious within us, that comes up and makes us feel like, oh, wow, I thought I was in control. I thought I knew what was going on. Now there's a force or an energy or a presence or events or people or themes that are making me realize that I don't have full control, or I wasn't aware of something, or something within me took the wheel. Like sometimes it's a demon, or it's a shadow, or it's an unconscious spot. For example, it can drive people to addiction, or it can drive people to self-destructive behavior. But it's not just that. It's also what is bigger than me that suddenly comes in and takes the wheel, which is also the gods, which is also the direction of our destiny. And when we are met with things that are bigger than ourselves, does it cause us to surrender more deeply, to trust more deeply, to find this kind of intuitive way of knowing and trusting that things that come up that we don't understand, didn't see coming, can't plan for, can't control, that we can learn from them, that we're still safe, that this is still a meaningful part of life? Pluto tests that over a very long period of time when it's moving through the 12th house, not all at once, not every day, but as a process. When that's happening, there's a tremendous opportunity for us to get to know the unconscious and to become more conscious, which is great because then we become wiser and more luminous and happier, hopefully. But also, as Pluto's moving through the 12th house, we can find that there are things that we have to come to terms with that are uncomfortable, that are truly like shadow material. So there's a little bit of both, but either way, if we surrender to the process and just kind of wave the white flag and say, I'm not here to control, I'm here to learn, that process is going to be really amazing. It can also be, Pluto in the 12th can also be about facing things that we don't that we misunderstand, or that we don't have a clear grasp on, and getting to know them, and also developing within us a more charitable humanitarian outlook, especially with some concern for people who are suffering. That's such a Pluto in the 12th house and Aquarius theme. So the card that I drew was the Five of Pentacles, which shows two people sort of out in the cold. They look like, one is sort of looks like he's injured, he's on crutches, he's like a broken foot. The other one, I think, is barefoot, walking in the snow. These people are down on their luck, and they're standing outside of like a church, of a place of charity. They're kind of on the outside, looking in, looking for some help or support. This could be a year in which you need that support, and you need to be open enough to look for it and ask for it. On the other hand, it could be that people are going to look to you for that form of support. Either way, it taps into the 12th house nature, which is forces bigger than myself, like injury, poverty, weather, etc., have made their presence felt. And now I'm seeking shelter, I'm seeking support, or I'm seeking to give it or embody a spirit of compassion. So I love the Five of Pentacles for Pisceans, who I think are naturally very compassionate souls. And the Pluto in Aquarius may deepen the humanitarian impulse within you, but it may also require that you don't be too proud to seek out help. And it could be for very small things. So don't take that card as like an omen of catastrophe. It's really just a card that says, when you need help, don't be too proud to ask for it. When you're out in the cold, so to speak, look for warmth and seek out shelter, seek out safe places where you can heal or process or find commonality or common ground or community even. Jupiter Uranus in the third is interesting because if you think about the third house, it was traditionally called the joy of the moon, and it speaks to the kind of lunar everyday life and environment. It's like the culture that you live in, like the fish that are swimming in water don't really recognize that they're swimming in water necessarily. The third house is like the water we're swimming in. It's our environment, culturally and environmentally, mind-body environment as well. Jupiter Uranus suggests almost like a home makeover for the culture or the environment that you inhabit, including mind, body, thoughts, emotions, with an opening, generous, big-hearted quality that Jupiter and Uranus provide, Jupiter being your ascendant ruler. So I love this year as a year of like really opening your mind, really changing things in the environment, shifting your orientation culturally or philosophically, or even just physically moving things around in the environment to make room for this kind of big-hearted, broad-minded opening that wants to come through. And then again, the idea of like, the things that may come up that have to do with the suffering of humanity and the desire to serve or help, as well as maybe the suffering that comes up within yourself and being open enough to make big changes so that you could receive help and not feel like you have to be alone in something. Anyway, those are some of the thoughts that come to my mind. I really wish that that Lori was here to close because I'm just doing this by myself on her channel, on her beautiful channel. So anyway, I appreciate having the chance to come on. I'm sure maybe Lori will slap an ending on this of her own. She had told me that I could tell you guys about the Kickstarter one last time before I leave, so I'll just do that really quickly. If you want to find more, if you want to learn more about all of the programs that I offer and the courses in Hellenistic astrology that I teach, you can go to nightlightastrology.com, not nightlife like a club, but nightlight like the thing you turn on in your room as a child when you're afraid of the dark. Nightlightastrology.com. And when you go over there, you can learn about all my stuff, and my YouTube channel is Nightlight Astrology and all that good stuff. You can learn about all of our courses. We have a first, second, and third year course in Hellenistic astrology that are meant for people who want to go professional or people who are just doing it because this is your hobby. You can kind of go at the level of depth that you want. We provide different layers of depth for each program in terms of how much you want to do in and outside of class. We have a horary astrology program as well. I've got a masterclass series. We have a moon circle that meets. So there's lots of stuff you can check out on the website. And then last thing is the Kickstarter. All of our courses are on sale for like 50% off through the Kickstarter. If you bundle 3 or 4 of our programs out of the 6 we offer, you get up to about 75% off. So I really appreciate Lori letting me come on and promote the Kickstarter. Lori is one of my favorite students to have ever come through my programs. And I know she studied with a bunch of people. So, but she's truly a joy and like just a contagiously optimistic, wise, funny, quicksilver, mercurial type of astrologer. And I just am so honored to be here today and to have shared with you guys. So I'm going to sign off on this and let her do with the rest whatever she wants. But yeah, it was fun to hang out, talk a little Pluto and Aquarius. Nice getting to know Lori's audience. And I hope that maybe we'll cross over and she can come on my channel sometime, and hope that some of you will come visit our community on the Nightlight Astrology page as well. I'm sure you'd find some of you may already be on both pages or watch both shows, but I think you'll find that there's our conversation today and the kind of kindred spiritedness is reflected in the content that we do as well. So anyway, nice hanging out with you guys. Take it easy. Bye.